As the African Maritime Analyst for IHS Maritime, I'm primarily involved with looking at maritime trends around the African continent. I also report on daily news and work very closely with the maritime data teams to enable me to put together detailed reports and analysis on maritime trends, markets and so forth. And today at the DGI conference, I've been talking about two particular case studies centered around Africa. One of them looks at the Suez Canal and the other one has been looking at the Lagos, Anchorage and the Niger Delta region in the Gulf of Guinea. So when I looked at the Suez Canal, I looked at an attack on the COSCO Asian in August last year, an attack on a Chinese container ship from RPG while it was transiting the Suez Canal. And what we were looking to see was whether or not there had been an increase in security in the region following the attack, and also to see whether there'd been any impact on maritime trade transiting through the Suez Canal. And what we found is that there hasn't been a great deal of reduction in maritime trade as a result of, or reduction in vessels transiting the Suez Canal, but we had seen an increase in military capability. We've seen an increase in activity from the Egyptian government in deciding to increase stop checks and various other activities that they could do to try to have a greater presence in and around the Suez Canal area. And we did this, as I said, using both our maritime data, but more importantly, also using geospatial satellite imagery, which has been provided by IHS, which is now part of Airbus, to really have a closer look of what is happening, look at the military bases, look at the increase in military activity all around the area. A lot of new capability, which we've been able to demonstrate with this case study. The second case study that I looked at, which is probably the most interesting and topical to the audience that we had today at DGI, was looking at the Gulf of Guinea and focusing primarily on two key issues. One of them, Lagos, Anchorage, and container vessels and vessels sitting in Anchorage. A lot of oil tankers sitting in Anchorage and the effect that that's having on the influx of piracy, and then also looking at the Gulf of Guinea and having a look at what is causing the issues in that area. And we were very fortunate to be able to incorporate Astrium geospatial satellite imagery to be able to monitor both areas of the Gulf of Guinea. In Lagos, what we saw is that vessels are sitting in Anchorage for up to 150 hours on average. That's a lot of time, and a lot of time for pirates to carry out their activity. And we also saw from the geospatial imagery that there's very little naval patrol in that region. And so one of the things that we were advising was that an increase in surveillance, an increase in presence in the Lagos, Anchorage area would go a long way in dealing with the issue of piracy and crime in that area. And then looking at the Gulf of Guinea, we had a greater in-depth study on the Awoba-Krokama axis, which is an area of the Niger Delta where there's been a lot of illegal bunkering activity taking place. And we did a study on the Nembe Creek trunk line and could see from the geospatial imagery a number of small vessels moving along those tiny creeks in the rivers and weaving their way across down to the Bonny Estuary, where it's believed that at night there's possible illegal transferring of oil to larger vessels and taking the oil out of Nigeria to other terminals in the western region within the Gulf of Guinea. So we've been able to do two case studies and use geospatial imagery to provide insight to our audience.